Artists talk about waiting for the muse to show up, but it's rare she'll pop in every day, and if you wait for her patronage, you'll never get anything done. Instead, you need to march up to the muse's house and bang on her door. There's no guarantee she'll come. There will even be times when she says something insulting and bolts her locks. But if you visit her rather than the other way around, she'll be more inclined to come, even if you have to be patient. In creating this video, I primarily have writers in mind, but if you're a creative of any kind, someone who makes videos, draws, designs video games, and so on, this advice may help you too. After all, as someone who has watched YouTube videos geared towards painters, despite being a writer myself, I have found a lot of advice can cross over. With that out of the way, I want to talk about how you can summon the muse, or at least how you can encourage her to come around more often. As creatives, we want to feel, well, creative, but that can be hard, and creating when you're not in the mood can be about as much fun as waiting in the dentist's office. If you're a writer, you may even suffer from writer's block. And if you're a creative of any kind, whether that's a painter or a photographer, you've likely suffered from self-doubt. If your posts on social media have tanked, or no one is buying your art, you may even question if you have any talent. You might wonder if continuing to pursue art is worth it. You may ask yourself if you're good enough. Inspiration alone won't make you a better artist, but it can make you feel better. In my experience, a great deal of self-doubt comes from not only a lack of confidence or practice, but a poor mood. If it's 3 in the morning and you haven't slept for 20 hours, that is not the time to evaluate your art. If you're feeling like crap or you're creatively blocked, your perspective is skewed, though a rush of inspiration can give you a much-needed confidence boost. Still, how does one actually summon the muse, or at least make her presence more frequent? Is there a way to increase one's allotment of inspiration? Can you actually invite the muse to come intentionally? Well, yes and no. There will be days when she won't want to come, no matter what you do. But, while you can't always make her come immediately, there are several methods which might encourage her to come more often. Before we continue, I'm Riley, and this is Otherworldly Fiction. On this channel, I rant about fantasy books, discuss characters and lore, share my bookish opinion, and offer the occasional writing advice. If any of that sounds like your cup of tea, hit that subscribe button. Posts are on Fridays. You can't drag the muse from her house in handcuffs, at least not most of the time. However, you can do several things which will make her want to visit. These activities aren't complicated, and some may apply more strongly to writers than others. But here are 5 methods to get yourself in an inspired mood. Number 1. Read more. I've made this point before, when discussing writer's block and how writers specifically can regain their creative drive. But it bears repeating. If you're struggling to write, your lack of reading could be to blame. We've all heard the Stephen King quote, but here it is again. If you don't have the time to read, then you don't have the time or the tools to write. Now, some of you are probably pissed off. You have a toddler to feed and a day job to manage. You only have an hour each day to write. And some rich dude is telling you that your writing sucks because you're too responsible to devour a novel. Your feelings aren't invalid, and writing shouldn't be conditional, but Mr. King still has a point. No one said you had to read a lot. Reading a lot is great if you have the time, but reading for only 15 minutes a day is still reading. Knock off a few pages before bed, and no one can accuse you of ignoring Stephen King's advice. Plus, the guy is pretty prolific, so I'm inclined to think he knows what he's talking about. From my own experience, I have found that reading more makes me write more. Whatever I'm reading, the act of reading itself seems to refill some fuel tank in my brain, which I then draw from when I write. Moreover, an especially good story, or one that resonates with you, could give you a new idea. If watching Wednesday reignites your desire to write a YA novel about a magic school, go for it. Reading inspires us. It gives us characters to emulate in our own work. It teaches us how to write better by revealing what we could improve. And it gets us thinking, pushing us to put a new spin on an idea we love, or providing us with a mood or an archetype we can explore further. Reading will make you a stronger writer. It will give you ideas. It will simply get your brain working in a creative way. The muse likes a brain that's cluttered with stories. And consuming books will be like ringing her doorbell. Plus, even if you're not a writer, reading forces you to picture vivid images. If you're someone who likes to draw, you might draw a favorite character or a scene from the book you've just finished. Some musicians are inspired to write songs about the stories they've enjoyed, like Stevie Nicks writing a song, Moonlight, A Vampire's Dream, which was inspired by Twilight. Number 2, listen to music. Speaking of musicians, one of the best ways for any creative to get into the mood is by listening to music. Everybody will have different ways of doing this, but music speaks to all of us. Some of us are more obsessed with it than others, but I've yet to meet someone who hates music. We all have different tastes, but music is music. Whether you're a 70-year-old losing herself in the Beatles for the 100th time, or a 14-year-old who's rocking out to Miley Cyrus on TikTok, music has affected you. It's been a big part of your life, whether you've been aware of it or not, and you can probably name at least 10 songs that you love. Many creatives like to listen to music while they work. For my part, I like having music when I'm adding zoom effects to my YouTube videos, or if I decide to draw, but I'm not one of those people who can listen to music while I write. Music can help others lose themselves in the written word, but I use it a little differently. Instead of listening to music while I write, I listen to it between writing sessions. As I sink into an old favorite or rediscover a song I forgot for 6 months, I picture scenes from my story. This could be a dialogue exchange, but even more often it's a montage. I imagine my characters like they're in a movie. One person catches another person kissing someone else, and then the music swells as they flee from the room. A side character slumps forward, his head in his hands, while he debates whether to confess his feelings or not to his crush. Picturing these scenes in my head, with a whole orchestra, just gets me excited to write them. Moreover, if I'm thinking a few books ahead, music has helped me to think out whole plots. I'll still hammer out the smaller details when I'm actually writing, but a musical score has allowed me to visualize new plot twists, picture an idea I already had happening differently, or made me imagine a subplot which would fit perfectly into a story I've outlined. I don't know how many other writers do this, but this is how I've used music. Many writers like to create playlists for their books or individual characters. Some, for the fun of it, will even share a Spotify link with fans. But that's up to you. One author who took inspiration from music was Stephanie Meyer. Now, you might not be a Twilight fan, though if you're already subscribed to this channel, you probably are. But music helped Meyer. It excited her and inspired her to write more, a goal every writer can relate to. She imagined scenes beat by beat to certain songs, and if you're interested in hearing which songs inspired her, You can find her playlists for each book in the Twilight Illustrated Guide. Many of the songs on her playlist are swoony, angsty, and moody, which helps to explain Twilight's tone. And if tone is something you're struggling with, turning to music can help. I listen to a lot of moody music, which explains why my books can also be moody, though I consider myself, ironically enough, a relatively cheerful person. At any rate, music makes us feel good, and sometimes it just helps to put a soundtrack to our lives while we work. Number 3. Pursue another creative hobby. Creativity isn't something you put in a box. It's not something you can contain. And harnessing creativity isn't the same as controlling it. By its very nature, creativity is limitless, and you can make more creativity by simply being creative. Inspiration is something which can inspire itself. And this is clearer than ever when you look at creators who practice multiple disciplines. Many writers are creative in other ways. Common pursuits for writers include drawing, video production, writing music, and acting. In high school, if there was a creative elective, I was in it. I took film, photography, drawing and painting, acting, animation. If I was allowed to make shit, I was happy. Of course, this isn't to say you'll love every creative activity. For my part, I'm terrible at sewing, and I'll be happy if I never have to see another needle and thread. That said, there's a good chance you felt urges to express your creativity in other ways. Even if you haven't acted on them yet, they're there. I used to draw all the time as a kid. I was also in the school choir, and I was one of those crazy theater kids who thought it was perfectly normal to talk in weird voices and join in a cuddle puddle, which is exactly what it sounds like. You pile in with a bunch of people, wrap yourself in a blanket, and make a rough puddle shape. Yeah, I guess that was pretty weird in hindsight, but we were theater kids. Things like normalcy didn't matter. I haven't been drawing as much since becoming an adult, but it is something I'd like to get back into. I still draw the odd picture, and I followed a couple art channels on YouTube. It's not much, but it's a start. Eventually, I'd also like to learn how to play the piano, because sometimes snatches of songs pop into my head. And if I come up with a melody I really like, I'll record it on my phone. One thing I have done is start this YouTube channel, which requires me to write more analytically and edit. All this to say that pursuing another discipline, or several, can force you to think in different ways. And nothing is better for creativity than outside-the-box thinking. Creativity feeds itself, and varying the types of art you do can make you feel more creative in general, which in turn fuels your writing. Moreover, if you become skilled in a second discipline, you might even marry the two skills together. For example, one gaming channel I follow, Oni Plays, utilizes other skills. The creator, Chris, can draw, which makes his thumbnails pop out, and he can write music. He can also do animation, and he's since combined all of these skills to make his own video game. In the future, I'd love to create visual novels based on my books. And this would be easier if I could draw my own characters and write a score for the story. At any rate, it would save me a great deal of money, while allowing me to exercise my brain in different ways. After all, creating just stretches your brain muscles. Creating within a second discipline stretches them differently. It's like exercise. Running is good for you and will keep you healthy overall. But you can push your body in other ways. You can do yoga and improve your breathing. You can lift weights and concentrate on your upper body strength. You can do sit-ups and strengthen your core. Running can be good enough, but throw in other types of exercise, and your body, as well as your skill as a runner, can improve even more. Creativity is the same way. If you only write, that's fine. You're still exercising your brain. However, if you throw in other creative tasks, like editing videos or drawing, you work out parts of your brain which are underused, parts which can in turn support those you have been using. As an aside, be sure to like this video if you've enjoyed it so far. Number 4, have a shower. I know, this is the biggest cliche, but you know why? Because it works. Real life isn't The Sims, unless you're taking a shower. When a sim jumps into a shower, they can jump out with an inspired moodlet, though the player has to be intentional about it. The sim won't be inspired by every shower. You have to tell the sim specifically to take an inspired shower. And it's the same way in real life. If I just clamber into the shower, my mind usually wanders. I start planning my future, or worrying about the packing I need to do. Left unchecked, a brain in the shower functions surprisingly similarly to a brain that's being put to bed. But you're not trying to fall asleep while showering. If you'd wanted a snooze, you would have taken a bath instead. Also, showers are supposed to be relaxing. So letting all those worries bombard you isn't going to leave you feeling good. Instead, if you're free to think, you'll want to rein your brain in. When you have a shower, do so intentionally. If there's a scene that's giving you trouble in your book, or you're confused as to the purpose of the entire novel you've written, concentrate on that as you turn the water on. I have a funny relationship with showers. It can be a drag throwing myself in, but once I'm in, I never want to get out. The advice I'm about to give might piss off environmentalists, and I'll admit that I'm privileged enough to live in the country which has the greatest amount of fresh water. But sometimes you need to daydream. When I'm standing under that hot water, I start watching scenes in my head. It could be a scene I won't write for 6 books yet, or one from the book I'm currently working on. But I'll let it play out. I'll focus on dialogue, pauses, sound, and the setting itself. I'll just let the scene come to life. I don't do this with every shower, but it's effective when I do. Sometimes I come away with whole new stories, or a character motivation, and once I've toweled off, I rush off to take notes. How I use showers is similar to how I use music, but showers sometimes let me dig deeper. It's harder, though not impossible, to concentrate on one scene or dialogue when listening to music, and so I'm more likely to picture the broad strokes of a story. While in the shower, though, I can focus on details. I can immerse myself in one scene, and work on how I might improve it. It's not great for the water tank, but I can always fall back on music if I want to conserve. Number 5, go for a walk. Again, it's another cliche, but it's one that has worked for me. Not all walks are created equal, and some will be more inspiring than others. But even taking a dog out to pee for 3 minutes has given me room to think. On a 15-minute walk, on a sunny day through a pretty street, I can at least come up with a scene. I might think of an arc for a character, or become aware of a plot hole, and create a solution for it. But brief walks give me space to iron out issues, develop my world, and come up with new moments. On longer walks, I simply soak in the inspiration, and the best walks are those I've had in the forest. If I can take a forest walk in the autumn, that's even better, because autumn, with its gorgeous foliage, warm but brisk days, and invitation to watch supernatural shit, is the season when I feel most inspired. I need to make a video on why autumn inspires me, but if you have time for a lengthy walk, forests are the way to go. Name a classic fantasy story that doesn't take place in a forest. Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and even Star Wars also feature prominent forest scenes. In Lord of the Rings, the characters visit multiple forests, and some have trees that walk and talk. In Harry Potter, the Forbidden Forest is one of the most used locations, outside of the castle itself. Forests are awesome, but they're also good for you. When you walk in a forest, you feel good, and being in a novel environment opens your imagination. That's not just a mushroom, but the home of a fairy. That's not just a bird, but the chieftain of a legendary race of talking animals. That's not just a tree, but the home of a dryad, the prison of a vampire, or a person who was transformed and waits to regain movement. Trees alone can give you a lot of ideas. And there's something about being surrounded by them that makes me feel creative. Trees release oxygen and other beneficial chemicals. If you go into a forest on a brisk autumn day, I guarantee you'll come out feeling good, which will increase your chances of being inspired. I can't tell you how many times I've left a forest brimming with ideas. I didn't use them all, but still, having ideas feels good. Moreover, if you're someone who likes to draw or paint, the benefits of going out into nature should be self-explanatory. From one outing alone, you could come away with 50 reference images. In conclusion, on this channel, I've talked about fighting writer's block or regaining creativity. But with this video, I wanted to focus on the feeling of inspiration in general and share what has worked for me. The muse can be a fickle friend, and it might seem like she's ignoring you. But by trying these 5 activities out, you can push her to visit you more often. None of these activities require much. You may need time and some money, but in many cases, all of these can be free. You can always go for a walk without spending a dime, and the library gives you access to hundreds of free books. A Spotify subscription is relatively inexpensive, and you can shower anytime, though be aware of your hydro bill. If it's just creativity you're lacking, or you wish the muse would visit and give you a boost more often, you can encourage her company. You can't control creativity, and you can't make the muse your prisoner. But by following these 5 methods, you can make her your friend. And on a good day, you may summon her, though you should still treat her visit as a privilege rather than an expectation. Be it reading more, pursuing other creative hobbies, listening to music, showering, or taking a walk, there are plenty of ways to put yourself in an inspired mood and make the muse your friend for years to come. What are some ways you inspired yourself? Do you practice multiple art forms? Sound off in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and happy writing!